My name is Deborah Hughes, and joining me today are representatives from Singapore, Egypt, Ghana, and Sweden, and we'll hear from them and their dyslexia and education in their countries after this presentation. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please click the Q&A icon at the bottom of the Zoom window and type in your questions, or you can just use the chat function. And we'll endeavour to answer those questions here tonight. And of course, if we run out of time, we'll post the answers on the DAS website. So let's get started, and we'll talk again at the end of the presentation. So we'll see you at the end.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Lee Siang. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Dyslexia Association of Singapore. Welcome to our World Dyslexia Awareness Week International Forum. We are very honored to have with me my co-editor for the Routledge International Handbook of Dyslexia in Education, Dr. Gad Elberheri from Egypt, as well as three of our chapter contributors, Dr. Geeta Shantaram from Singapore, Ms. Rosalind Abigail Kiranati from Ghana, and Ms. Susanna Sadikis from Sweden. Without much further ado, let's invite Gad, who is the chairman of Educational Global Consultants, as well as a board member of the International Dyslexia Association, to share with us what the International Handbook on Dyslexia meant to him. Gad, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Gad Elberheri, and I am the first editor of this book that came recently. It has been published by Routledge in London. It's called the Routledge International Handbook of Dyslexia in Education. I collaborated with my colleague Siang Lee, who is the CEO of Singapore Dyslexia Association. It has been more than 100 years since the term dyslexia was first coined. And dyslexia has become an international concern. It's a reading disorder, and we know that reading affects literacy, and literacy is the best vaccination for poverty. And literacy rates are linked to better living standards and more job opportunities. So we know the cost of illiteracy and the cost of literacy challenges. And the corpus of knowledge that we have concerning dyslexia is huge. A lot of people are interested, educators such as myself, psychologists, people in the medical field, or the early pioneers, whether they are neurologists or people who were fascinated by the vision and the role of vision, or auditory processing and the role of auditory processing in reading. We're fascinated by the term dyslexia. There is a lot of interest and input from around the world. However, we noticed that the early research and a lot of the research has come from the West, and the subjects in the published research studies were mainly people who spoke English. And we think that assumptions might have been made about the nature of dyslexia that is dependent to some extent on the English language and the nature of the English language. And recently, over the last perhaps 20, 30 years, people have been collaborating and interested in finding out how dyslexia manifests itself differently. Because although we know that the underlying cognitive challenges by dyslexics are the same, the degree of the severity of the condition and how dyslexia will manifest itself will actually depend to some extent to the language, whether it's spoken language or whether it's written language, and the orthography and how the orthography is mapped to the phonology of that language. So this is a very interesting field of study, cross-linguistic studies of dyslexia, because we notice until now, despite the great advancement that we've done in the field of dyslexia, tests to identify the conditions exist in relatively few languages. And we need a lot of awareness, a lot of capacity building, a lot of development of tools and resources in countries around the world. And because of our interest in that, we've published the International Handbook of Dyslexia in Education. My colleague Siang and I, we've actually succeeded in collecting 41 chapters. 41 chapters from contributors who represent Africa, Asia, Europe, North America and South America, in more than a dozen languages actually. They spoke a dozen languages, but the book itself is written in English. And we really are very proud of the work. It cements and clearly explains that dyslexia is an international concern. And we believe that by sharing the experiences that we all have from around the world, one can reflect and can help understand our own local context. And we learn from each other's approaches and each other's experiences on how different countries are actually dealing with dyslexia. So I'm very happy and very proud that we've produced such a work, and I hope you'll find it useful and informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gad, for that wonderful introduction. I really like your comments about how literacy is the vaccination for poverty. And perhaps we can return to that when we have our panel discussion afterwards. Now let us bring on our first chapter contributor, Ms. Rosalind Abigail Kira-Nati from Ghana. Now, Rosalind was diagnosed with dyslexia 7 years ago. Today, she is the founder and executive director of the Africa Dyslexia Organization. Rosalind and her team realized that the inclusive education policy in their country was still lacking, and they therefore engaged their government. And today they have made significant improvements in terms of awareness, teacher training, and research. Yet, Rosalind feels that the number of trained teachers in dyslexia is still lacking in Ghana. Well, let's hear from Rosalind about their incredible work in Ghana. Rosalind, please.
Greetings from Accra, Ghana. Ghana is located in West Africa, and my name is Rosalind Abigail Kira-Nati. I am the founder and executive director of the Africa Dyslexia Organization. I got to know about dyslexia because I am a child who has struggled all throughout my life. I started reading and writing at the age of 17. So going through the school system was very hard for me here in Ghana. 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And that day was a moment of, for me, happiness and also sad moment for me. Happiness in the sense that I could literally now be able to point to what my challenges were or still are to date. And sad also because my mind went back to my school days, and I remember so well that I was not the only child who was not doing well in school. What could have been the possibility if they had gotten the support intervention that is needed to thrive on? As an organization, one thing we also realized is we wanted to go into really finding out as to how a country like Ghana, what they have done so far. We realized that there are a couple of documents that talks about support that we could give to learners with learning challenges. But there wasn't much of work that is being done when it comes to dyslexia. And so one of the things we did from the beginning was really reviewing Ghana's inclusive education policy and realizing the gap that was in it. So when we saw the gap, we immediately drew the attention of the Ministry of Education and the Ghana Education Service about what we have realized. This was at a time where they were considering to do the policy review. And so our organization was added to it to do the review and make recommendation. I would say till date, we have done a great job in recommendations as to how a country like Ghana can give support and resources to teachers to enable teachers be able to teach children with learning difficulties, and also how the students will be able to get accommodations and the support needed in the school. We have done that, but it's still pending. It's yet to get to Parliament for approval. And so that's what we have done now. There are local non-profit organizations who are trying their best. Before we started the Africa Dyslexia Organization, we had an organization called Dyslexia Ghana, who provide assessment and learning intervention for children with dyslexia and related learning difficulties. We also have special attention projects who were supporting dropout schools and helping them. Most of these dropout school students were having learning challenges. Not many of them were assessed, but they had learning challenges, and so they were also giving them great support so that they could put them back in the mainstream education. Then we as Africa Dyslexia Organization started, and we decided to raise awareness, advocacy, train teachers, and now we are adding research to the work that we do. And so these are the support of what local activities and outreach that we do. We do outreach from schools, through churches, through the Ministry of Education, the Ghana Education Service. Like every platform that we get, we raise awareness. I have to highlight that Africa Dyslexia Organization was not set up just for Ghana. We want to touch every corner of the Africa continent. But because of I am from Ghana, we thought to start our activities here and use it as let's say a prototype to be able to look on to go into other organizations. Recently, I was in Kenya raising awareness over there, and we mainly did media outreach, which went really well. And we're looking at expanding it, where I'm looking at next month, which is in October, end of October, be in Namibia and start to have a conversations with the Ministry of Education as well as to how we can support them in this regard. When it comes to mental health issue with children with related learning disability and dyslexia, I would tell you that since we started this work, we have seen a lot. We've heard a lot of stories that are heartbreaking, stories where children want to leave home, stories where children want to commit suicide. Children are not happy. And that is the beauty of our work, is that we are able to talk to families so that they change the approach of how they handle their kids at home. We have great students here who we meet, and they are very talented, but they are almost losing it because their families are not paying attention to them. I am very happy that the Ministry of Education is championing something related to gifted and talented education, because we realize that there are certain students that are just smart, like smart in terms of talent, whether it comes to robotics, whether it comes to creativity, like crafts, whether like name it, a lot of stuff, a computer, science. Like we have very gifted and talented kids, and Ghana is currently working on something that will address the need of children who are like very twice exceptional children. So we have that coming up. I feel like when that comes, and actually they are building a school for it, I feel like once that's come into being, some of our dyslexic learners will go and thrive in such an environment. The only thing I'm hoping is, even though they are going to have this incredible school, they are not going to really, they are going to change their approach of how we deal with some of these students, how we deal, especially with our students who are talented or gifted, but they are dyslexics. You're not going to let their inability to read and write now to hindrance them showing the creativity that they have. So that's what I'm hoping. With regards to teacher training support, we are conducting serious trainings here in Ghana. So far since 2020 till now, both online and physical training, we have done training for 3,771 teachers. The ones we have done online, which has made us get a huge number, I would say we're orientation training. These trainings are not enough to get the teacher prepared to be able to give support. We need more trainings. We need more trainers. We don't have trainers who are qualified in Ghana to train. We have few of them. We need more. We need to put in place train the trainer program. We need to have extensive training. If there is inadequate funding, that is one thing that the Africa Dyslexia Organization really want to work on, is to have trained a trainer program for our educators and really train more teachers and go into the rural communities as well. When it comes to research, we as an organization have not done any research yet. However, this October, we are launching our first research, which is assessing the knowledge and understanding of teachers in both private and public schools. What do they know about learning disability? If they know, are they doing something about it? Do they have the resources to support students? And once we are done with the research, we are going to publish the report out, and based on the reports, we will use that to stand on and see what our Ministry of Education can do with us, so that we can access some funding from agencies like the UNESCO and UNICEF. So that is our focus at the moment. In the future, when it comes to the way forward, as an Africa Dyslexia Organization, in the next 5 years, it is our hope to establish the first ever dyslexia training institute in Africa. So this is our long-term goal. And for immediate goal as a nation for Ghana, we are in talk with the country to look at designing a training program for all our teacher training institutions, so that everybody who passes through the training institution will take training on dyslexia and related learning disability. We want training to reach everybody, and we want training to be mandatory for every teacher. We want to work with everybody so that tomorrow that child's dream will be realized, because we believe every child can learn, every child is a star, and we want to be the voice for the voiceless in the classroom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosalind. I absolutely agree that every child is a star. Now let's bring on our second chapter contributor, Ms. Susanna Sedekist from Sweden. I must read here because Susanna's range of work and activities is vast. And Susanna is a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist, trainer, author, speaker for dyslexic thinking. I know Susanna is very concerned that in Sweden, there has yet to be standardized criteria for the identification of dyslexia, right? And we hope that she will tell us more about it afterwards. She's also concerned that there is still a lack of conversation for dyslexia in the workplace in Sweden. Susanna is very keen for all of us to better understand dyslexic strengths and the power of dyslexic thinking. Right, it will be a great sharing by Susanna. Let's hear from her.
Hi, my name is Susanna Sedekist, and I'm also from Sweden. I'm a teacher with further education in courses related to dyslexia and special education. I'm a lecturer and provide training to companies and workplaces on dyslexic thinking, the benefits of our differences, and accessible text. I do teacher training and educate schools, teachers and school leaders on understanding dyslexia in the classroom and how to create equitable and sustainable education. I mentor and assist adults and university students with dyslexia in understanding their competences and finding their ways. And I also work with parents of children with dyslexia. I have written 2 books, and I am the leader of WHOLE, International Dyslexia Strengths Network. My work with dyslexia began when I started to delve into and write about dyslexia and music, how dyslexia impacts the field of music, at the Royal College of Music in Stockholm, nearly 20 years ago. So, dyslexia in Sweden. Many of us are used to working with technology, children and adults. Audiobooks are a big thing here in Sweden. And you can say that you have read a book when you have listened to it, as many people with dyslexia do. Read with our ears. Ear read, as I call it. When it comes to diagnosing dyslexia in Sweden, the procedure varies across the country. In most places, speech and language pathologists, SLPs, are responsible for making the medical diagnosis of dyslexia. The approach of handling and understanding dyslexia in schools differ. Assessments often take place in schools through screening of how students read at various grade levels, for example. These results can serve as a basis for further assessments conducted by a special education teacher, for instance. In some parts of Sweden, the school's student health service may then refer the findings to speech and language pathologists, SLPs. In certain areas of Sweden, it is also possible for adults to receive a dyslexia diagnosis. Unfortunately, national guidelines and standardized procedures for dyslexia identification and assessments throughout Sweden are still lacking. This leads to ambiguity and a lack of equity for parents, students, and schools across the country. The Swedish Association of SLPs has developed national guidelines, including recommendation for which abilities should be assessed and which test or combination of tests should be used. However, these guidelines have not yet been nationally approved. A student at the university level needs a dyslexia diagnosis to access support in their studies. Students with dyslexia usually attend regular classes alongside children without dyslexia. Sometimes these students with dyslexia may receive additional support or special education. At times, they may choose not to study a third language and instead focus on English and Swedish. Most people in Sweden are familiar with the concept of dyslexia, understanding it to be related to difficulties in reading and writing. Some adults with dyslexia feel that they cannot openly discuss their dyslexia in the workplace, believing that they need to conceal it. They fear that it could negatively impact their work. Hiding dyslexia can often drain a lot of energy from the individual. However, it's also true that the opposite occurs, of course, with some individuals being open about their dyslexia and what it entails. Interest in neurodiversity, the value of our differences, and the strength associated with dyslexia has started to grow among companies and others in Sweden as well. In Sweden, there are those who believe that dyslexic difficulties in reading and writing can be trained away, especially in terms of reading. This has consequences for individuals with dyslexia. It can lead to the perception that the individual themselves has not done enough. It is a privilege to be a part of and to assist people in this journey, as I do as a part of my work. Understanding the whole picture of dyslexia is also an essential part of this process. Recognizing that strengths are also linked to their ways of functioning. Dyslexia is not just about difficulties in reading and writing, but rather about a different way of functioning and thinking, which in turn results in both challenges and strengths. I call them dyslexic strengths. Knowledge about the whole picture of dyslexia, including dyslexic strengths, is gradually increasing. The Swedish definition of dyslexia is not yet as the British Dyslexia Association's definition that describes strengths in areas such as design, problem solving, and creative skills. But we are moving forward. Sometimes some people in Sweden think that you deny the problems if you talk about the strengths. But of course you don't. It is about to see the whole picture of dyslexia. The strengths, dyslexic strengths in dyslexic thinking, are not yet known to everyone in Sweden, but progress is being made. There has been a wealth of research conducted in Sweden for decades remaining reading and writing difficulties. Moving forward, it is crucial to consider the differences in dyslexic thinking and to study both the challenge and strengths associated with dyslexia. By limiting our research to a perspective solely focused on challenges, we risk overlooking a complete understanding and deeper insight into dyslexia. We need to do more research on the whole picture of dyslexia. The research also on the dyslexic strengths. But exciting things are happening right now in Sweden, so there will hopefully be a change regarding this in the future. Of course, Sweden also needs to be a part of the work of understanding dyslexic thinking even more. Immediate goals for the nation. 1. Expand research on dyslexia, including strengths. 2. Current debates and discussions about reading, education, and the future are ongoing. In Sweden, there are some concerns about the rapid technological advancements, AI, etc., which I interpret as an expression of the text norm and a part of it. Some, including some of the current policymakers, argue that the way forward is to further emphasize reading and writing skills, the role of books, etc. If text is not made accessible, and if there is not a broad perspective on what reading and writing entail today, this direction could pose risks and have negative consequences for individuals with dyslexia. 3. National exams. In the Swedish dyslexia movement, the dyslexia organizations and I have been working for many years to create equitable conditions for the national reading comprehension exams conducted by the majority of Sweden's school students. We are still not there. The Swedish National Agency for Education has not still changed their rules for children with dyslexia, and a significant injustice persists, with serious consequences on multiple levels. 4, and the last one. We need to increase equity across the country in both education and the workplace. Greater awareness and understanding of what dyslexia entails and its consequences are needed. We can enhance competency, efficiency further, as I call it, by accepting people's diverse way of thinking and working even more. There is much to gain by allowing people to be competent, efficient, and work according to their strengths. We need to see the whole picture of dyslexia. And we are different, and that is as it should be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Susanna. I was really interested that you mentioned that awareness of dyslexia in the workplace in Sweden is not as great, and you would like to do something about it. Well, we have the same thing here in Singapore. We also find that awareness and acceptance of dyslexia and other learning differences in the Singaporean workplace is still very limited. And this is one area that we are beginning to explore together with reaching out to students who are in institutes of higher learning. So maybe we can talk a bit more about this during the panel discussion afterwards. Now let's bring on our third and final chapter contributor, Dr. Geeta Shantaram. She wears many hats at the Dyslexia Association of Singapore. She is the director of SPLD Assessment Services. She's also the director of our English Language and Literacy Division, as well as staff professional development. Let us hear from Geeta about developments in dyslexia in Singapore. Geeta, please.
In 1996, Singapore's founding Prime Minister, the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, openly disclosed that he had dyslexia. This revelation sparked an increased interest and awareness of dyslexia in Singapore. Hello everyone, greetings from tropical Singapore. My name is Geeta and I've been privileged to have had the opportunity to work in the field of dyslexia for close to 20 years. My work allows me to interact with students, teachers, parents, the Ministry of Education, fellow practitioners and researchers, and community partners. In this video, I hope to take you on a journey as we explore how Singapore's understanding and response to dyslexia has evolved over the years. Efforts to support learners with dyslexia and special educational needs began quite early. Before 1965, local charity organizations were already supporting children with impairments. The 1980s and 90s saw the establishment of special schools, and today Singapore boasts 19 MOE-funded special schools, a testament to its continued commitment to support all learners. In 2004, a significant turning point occurred as Singapore's education system embraced inclusivity. This commitment was reinforced through amendments to the Compulsory Education Act in 2000. So in Singapore's mainstream education system, there are various initiatives to support learners with dyslexia. The Learning Support Program offers early intervention for Primary 1 and 2 students struggling with language and literacy. Over 2,000 SEN officers now assist learners with dyslexia and other special educational needs. And for those with persistent literacy difficulties, primary schools offer the school-based dyslexia remediation program. But apart from mainstream schools, other organizations and centers contribute to supporting individuals with dyslexia. Student care services offer identification and intervention services. Private operators, social enterprises, and therapy hubs also provide valuable support, complementing mainstream school services. The Dyslexia Association of Singapore plays a significant role by offering intervention services and identification services. Now, you must have heard this before. Technology levels the playing field for individuals with dyslexia. Educational technology goes beyond information retrieval, enabling flexibility in instruction delivery and differentiated assessment approaches. The COVID-19 pandemic led to a surge in the use of educational technology, with over 600,000 Singapore students attending remote learning. Singapore upgraded its e-learning platform and ensured that all learners had access to remote learning. So e-learning and educational technology in Singapore have become integral to both general and special education. But despite all the progress, challenges remain in Singapore's support for learners with dyslexia. As Singapore looks ahead, I'll highlight 4 priorities that are crucial for advancing support for individuals with dyslexia. Firstly, the way society perceives dyslexia can significantly impact those who live with it. Studies have found that Singaporeans were unfamiliar with special needs, leading to reluctance in mingling with learners with special needs and dissatisfaction over support provision. As a response, DS initiated the Embrace Dyslexia movement to foster a holistic understanding of dyslexia. This movement celebrates the inherent abilities of individuals with dyslexia, recognizing their strengths and talents. Now, we're all familiar with studies that have shown that individuals with dyslexia possess talents such as curiosity, empathy, creativity, and resilience, and more. In an increasingly competitive global landscape, countries like Singapore must harness the talents of all their citizens. Recognition of these strengths ensures that Singapore remains competitive by tapping into a diverse pool of talent and innovation. So all of us in Singapore, we need to play our part in deliberately grooming and showcasing these talents and strengths, and by doing so, redefining what dyslexia means. Secondly, the zero tolerance in addressing bullying. Bullying is a significant concern, with students with dyslexia being at a higher risk. Bullying can have severe psychological and emotional effects on students. For individuals with dyslexia who often already face academic challenges and may struggle with self-esteem, bullying can exacerbate feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and depression. Victims of bullying tend to have lower academic performance, and for students with dyslexia who may already require additional support to excel academically, bullying can further impede their learning progress. This academic impact can have long-term consequences affecting their future educational and career opportunities. Bullying can lead to social isolation, making it difficult for students to form healthy relationships and engage in school activities. So by taking a strong stance against bullying, Singapore schools can teach students valuable lessons about empathy, respect, and the importance of standing up against injustice. These lessons can have a lasting positive impact on both the school community and society at large. For students with dyslexia who might already experience challenges in social interactions, bullying can leave lasting emotional scars that persist into adulthood. This trauma can affect various aspects of an individual's life, including their relationships, mental health, and overall quality of life. So it's crucial to prevent such trauma, especially among vulnerable groups like students with dyslexia. Thirdly, extending support to post-secondary education. We know that dyslexia is a lifelong condition. Individuals don't outgrow it. While support for dyslexic students is available in Singapore's primary and secondary education, it's crucial to acknowledge that the challenges faced by these students evolve with the demands of higher education. As students transition to post-secondary education, their learning environment becomes more complex and they require continued support tailored to their needs. Now, without this ongoing support, students with dyslexia in post-secondary education risk falling behind their peers. The gap in academic progress can have lasting consequences. Moreover, as inclusivity is a fundamental principle of Singapore's education, all students, regardless of their learning differences, deserve equal opportunities to access and benefit from higher education. Post-secondary education often serves as a pathway to future career opportunities, and if a dyslexic student does not receive the necessary support during this critical phase, his or her career prospects may be limited. So this not only affects their economic well-being, but it also impacts our nation's workforce and overall productivity. The importance of extending support becomes even more pronounced, therefore, for students from low-income households. Singapore has witnessed an increasing trend of students from low-income backgrounds attending post-secondary education. These students may face additional challenges due to limited access to resources and support outside of the educational institution. Ensuring that support is available for students with dyslexia from low-income households is an ethical imperative that promotes social equity. With post-secondary education support, we enable them to fulfill their potential, contribute meaningfully to society, and this reflects Singapore's goal of nurturing a skilled and diverse workforce. So you see, extending dyslexia support into post-secondary education, it's not just a matter of equity and inclusion. In fact, it's an investment in the future of individuals and the nation as a whole. Finally, there is a need for an educator regulatory body, and a regulatory body would play a pivotal role in setting and maintaining high-quality standards for professionals involved in dyslexia support. It would establish guidelines, qualifications, and best practices to ensure that individuals providing intervention services are well equipped to meet the unique needs of learners with dyslexia. Such a regulatory body would promote consistency across the field of dyslexia intervention. It would require professionals to adhere to standardized procedures and ethical guidelines, fostering a sense of accountability. So the existence of a regulatory body also contributes to public awareness. How? It sends a strong message that dyslexia support is a professional field with recognized qualifications and standards. This can lead to increased interest in dyslexia research, education, and support. Therefore, the establishment of an educator regulatory body is a vital step in ensuring the effectiveness, consistency, and quality of dyslexia support services in Singapore. It's a proactive measure to protect vulnerable learners, enhance the credibility of dyslexia support professionals, and contribute to the overall improvement of dyslexia education and intervention in the country. Knowing that educators are regulated instills confidence in parents and students, and families can feel assured that their loved ones are receiving support from professionals who meet specific standards of competence and ethics, which is of course essential for building trust in any educational system. So there's no denying that Singapore has made remarkable progress in addressing dyslexia thanks to political, social, and educational efforts. National policies and initiatives have been established to support individuals with dyslexia and their families. However, like always, there's always still room for improvement in resource allocation for identification and intervention, as well as in empowering teachers. As Singapore aims to build an inclusive society, it's crucial to consider older students, youth, and also address issues related to victimization. Perhaps most importantly, the establishment of a regulatory body will ensure industry practices are guided and practitioners are empowered. Singapore must remain vigilant and responsive to the evolving needs of individuals with dyslexia because our collective future depends on each and every one of them. Thank you so much for listening, and let's talk some more.
Okay, if I can ask the panel to switch on their microphones and their cameras and join us. Well done, guys. Siang, over to you.
Thank you, Deborah. That was an excellent presentation, Gita, if I may say so.
Thank you so much.
It kind of reminded me of all the things that we still have to do here in Singapore. And of course, with the Singapore's Ministry of Education, we hope to do just that. Right? Now, Gad, I'm really glad we did this because looking at the attendees, there are participants from Indonesia, Thailand, Pakistan, India, Ethiopia, Botswana, and of course Singapore. So it's a nice international audience here.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome.
And of course we have more people watching on Facebook Live. So
yes.
That's really nice. And I think what we wanted to do at the beginning was to bring together this global community for dyslexia and encourage this global conversation, right? Yeah. Yeah, so while we wait for questions from our audience, Deborah had said earlier, I think, that if you have a question, do put it down in the chat or the Q&A. So while we wait for that, actually, I have a lot of questions for you guys. So, and Gad, I said at the beginning that, I really liked your comment that literacy is a vaccine for poverty, right? And in Singapore, there's been multiple studies that shows that family circumstances is the key factor in academic outcomes, right? So Rosalind and Susanna, I mean, do you guys have the same experience in Ghana and Sweden? Perhaps Rosalind first.
Absolutely. It's, I was just watching all the videos, the 2 videos, in addition to mine, and I'm like, it's just like the same everywhere. And the solutions are almost the same, even though we put it in cultural context to fit where we are geographically, the issues are the same. And it's so important that we have to address it now and not later. And so I absolutely agree with whatever was said.
Yeah, and me too. Thank you. It was very interesting to hear your perspective from your countries. And yeah, I agree with everything. Very important to have a good view of dyslexia. and also have this kind of conversations when we hear from different parts of the world what we are and what we need to work for.
So Susanna and Rosalind, it was, I mean, as I was, of course, listening to the videos, it's remarkable to know that some of the issues and, of course, our priorities are quite universal, right? It's something obviously we have experienced and we recognize. And I mean, just coming back to the issue on poverty, for example, when we think of a country like Singapore, it seems poverty may not come to the top of people's minds. I mean, that's the impression we maybe have about Singapore. But that, like Siang has mentioned, there have been studies that besides affecting your career pathway or your opportunities towards higher education, what we also notice is that poverty becomes a sort of co-occurring issue alongside an existing learning difficulty, and in fact even complicates the identification of these learning difficulties or differences naturally. And so students who come from, or learners who come from low-income households, when they demonstrate challenges, it may come across as if it is an outcome of their circumstances, the environment, rather than an inherent issue that could be addressed with the right intervention. So it's interesting to hear these commonalities across what may seem like very different environments in Sweden as well as in Ghana.
Yes, what I'm hearing here is that we are so different, yet we have so much of the same experiences, isn't it? And we have got one question which I think is linked to that point. Ashley asks, hello, I'm curious as to whether dyslexia presents similarly in other languages besides English. And I think, yes, there are a lot of similarities, but there are also differences. I think, Gad, you probably are in a very good position to respond to this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for organizing this, Siang, and thanks for all the lovely contributors. I'm very humbled and honored to be invited. Amazing. I got to know a lot from the presentation. And Singapore Dyslexia Association always surprises with this amazing around the world events. So thank you for the organizers and thank you for making this possible. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. I think there is a gentleman from Italy, a very good researcher called Palusu. And I think in 2002, perhaps, if I remember, him and his colleagues, they did a really nice study and they looked at dyslexics in English and French and Italian. So they were all dyslexics and they did the sort of brain scan MRI studies and they give them each a task, some sort of reading comprehension and reading out loud. And then what they've discovered is that they're all dyslexics. However, the degree to which the difficulties and the degree of the manifestation of dyslexia is actually different. So the Italian came on top just because their languages seems to have a much better mapping process between what they say and what they write, between their phonology and orthography. It's a very transparent orthography. I think Finnish comes maybe perhaps second or equally. So the Finnish language, the Italian language, with English and French, sort of French becoming a bit difficult because there's no one-to-one mapping process. So although dyslexia is a universal concern, although it's genetic, although it's hereditary, it runs in families, but the degree to which, at the surface, the degree to which we see the difficulties will depend on the language that you speak. So sometimes it will appear in phonemic awareness and phonological awareness in English, and sometimes it appears differently maybe amongst Japanese kids who learn hiragana and katakana and kanji script, because it's a very nice, or different from sort of Indian who learn Hindi, or those who learn Arabic and so on and so forth. So it's this cross-linguistic understanding of dyslexia is fascinating.
Yes. Well, Geeta, I mean, Singapore, of course, is a multilingual country. Would you like to share about the different languages and their experience with dyslexia?
Sure, I mean, I'll do my best. So yes, there are, besides English, which is of course the language of instruction, we have children or learners who take on Chinese, they have Malay, and then they have Tamil. And as Gad mentioned, how transparent the language is in the way it translates, does impact the way dyslexia surfaces. So Malay of these three languages is the most transparent in the way the phonemes map up against the graphemes, the way the sounds map up against the letters. So it is actually almost important for us to be vigilant when it comes to learners who may be having difficulties, but are maybe not demonstrating it in a language such as Malay. So they are spotted for their difficulties in English, perhaps, and it's assumed that therefore learning Malay may not have its challenges. But if you look at Chinese, which is more logographic, and if you look at Tamil, which is more syllabographic, I don't know, more syllabic sort of a language, the challenges really do occur in the way we would have to map learning that language against the way it's written. And we see that, for example, in the Chinese language, certain components like even issues like working memory affect the way you would learn Mandarin, more so than perhaps it would affect learning an alphabetic language. And in the case of Chinese, for instance, we have found ways that will help a learner manage this, and that is by making it more pictorial and having some semantic references to the symbols themselves. So there are obviously solutions, but the solutions obviously need to be related to the challenges that one would face when learning that particular language.
Thank you for that, Geeta. Rosalind, if I'm not wrong, and please pardon me if I get the pronunciation wrong, I think the most common language in Ghana is called Twi.
Yes, so our official language is English. However, we have over 80 languages, and depending on where you're coming from in Ghana and with the language that you speak. But like you rightly said, the most common language that everybody from every region may speak a bit of it is the Twi. And we learn that in school as well as a second language, even though that's our native. So for instance, that's not the only language. We learn major language like the Twi, Ga, Ewe, and then of course the Muslims are learning the Arabic as well as part of it. But me as a dyslexic person, now that I know I'm dyslexic, even the Twi, I never got to learn. I don't know how to read it. Even I'm very good with English than even the Twi because of the sounds in the words, in how we pronounce it and everything. I couldn't learn it till this. So very basic, like if maybe I want to say, how are you? It's the same. I struggle to write it, but if you look at the spelling, it's very easy. And if you ask me to pronounce it in Twi, then it's even worse at all. So for me, I feel like for dyslexic learners, we really struggle here. And for those that I have spoken with in Ghana here, asking them, do you know any other language apart from the English language? We can speak it, but we cannot really read, like write it or spell it. So that's the challenge we face here.
Yes. And of course, we must not miss out on the Swedish language. Susanna, you want to tell us more about it and the difficulties with dyslexia?
Yes, so Swedish is sometimes in between. If we have Finnish and Italian here, and then English here, we have Swedish in the middle. So I think we have quite the same difficulties and problems that you also describe, to write it down and to read and things like that as well, as you describe as well.
Thank you all. I think the one conclusion that we can certainly make is that dyslexia impacts different languages all over the world. And of course, because of the difference in the languages, there are some differences in how you would approach intervention, but there are also many similarities. Well, we have another question here from Sufrina. What advice would the experts here give to trainee educators and parents who are just beginning to learn about dyslexia and want to make a positive impact on dyslexic students' lives? Well, perhaps I can return to Gad to get us going on this question.
I'm a bit biased when I approach this question
Siang, I would start with motivation. Because
I know you would talk about motivation, Gad.
Yeah,
it's
I
your
think
pet topic. It's very, very, very important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So important.
Absolutely, because as soon as they hear about dyslexia, I mean, people from around this part of the world think it's a problem with your back. They think it's a disc problem, dyslexia. They struggle to even pronounce it. So as soon as people who, families and students and some teachers, especially in countries where the awareness is not as high, they get afraid and they get worried and they panic. And they say, oh, will my daughter get married when she gets old if she has dyslexia? Or will they actually read? Will they eventually read? Will they get a job? So they get that worry, that agony, that anxiety that comes with it really affects their life. So I would say, just give them positive. That's why I love what you guys are doing about positive dyslexia. Explain. I mean, don't belittle it. Don't water it down. But at the same time, also tell them this is not the end of the world. There is intervention. There is science-based intervention, and with help, you will get the help and the support. Don't worry, but approach it and deal with it and proceed, and you will be okay. So that would be my advice.
Would anyone else like to chip in here? Advice for, yes, Susanna.
Yes, I can say some word. Yes, I think it's so important to understand what dyslexia is and also see the whole picture of it, because it's often we just thinking about the problems with reading and writing, and yes, that's a part of dyslexia, but it's also about another way of thinking and another way of functioning. And the problems, I used to say that the problems is a result of this time of thinking, and another result is also the dyslexic strengths. So we need to understand this whole picture, and we don't exclude the problems because of we talk about the dyslexic strengths. It's so important to understand and see the whole picture, and it's very important for teachers and school leaders and individuals with dyslexia by themselves to both understand their competences and why it's hard, especially in schools, because the text norm is strongest. The text norm, I used to call it, is strongest in the school system. And that gets a lot of consequences for dyslexics. So deeply understanding the whole picture of dyslexia is very important. Thank you.
And this question, I guess, reminds me of what Rosalind was saying just now. You were concerned about teacher training or the lack of trained teachers, insufficient trained teachers in Ghana. And therefore, yeah, I think the first thing that we should all do for both parents and beginning educators is to get the information, get the knowledge, get some training. But I would also advise, of course, to seek the right people to get that information, right? Unfortunately, there is still some views that are a bit, in the left field. So do go to the established organizations, the International Dyslexia Association, for example. I mean, both Gad and I are part of that organization as well. They are very respectable, very lengthy history. So they would be a good place to go to. And of course, the various organizations that are represented here in Singapore, Ghana, Sweden, as well as in Egypt. All right, you know who to look for if you want the right information. It's now almost 7 o'clock in Singapore, 7 p.m. And I don't want to keep everyone too long, but I really wanted to end with this particular question, or rather, I would like to invite Susanna to tell us more about the Dyslexic Strengths Network, because I know Deborah and Gita and yourself, and you guys are very active on the Dyslexic Strengths Network. Deborah and Gita are huge fans of the efforts of this group. So yes, Susanna, can you tell us more about the Dyslexic Strengths Network?
Thank you. Yes, its name's WHOLE, International Dyslexia Strength Network, and we are professors, dyslexia researcher, and dyslexia experts from around the world, and we collaborate to see how can we come further with this wide view of dyslexia, the problems, of course, but also the strengths, and to spread the word about the whole picture of dyslexia. And you can read more about our work and who we are on wholedyslexia.com. There. So we are people from Iran and US and Singapore and
Yes.
France and Sweden and around the world, England.
Yeah.
Yes.
UK, Canada. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
China.
And the point is,
Yeah.
we are of like minds. We think we want the Embrace Dyslexia message to be strong, especially when children are having so much trouble in school. If they only know it's the long game, right? It's not a short game. So we have to stay positive and motivated, right? We have to stay motivated. You'll have good times and you will have bad times, but these kids, you know, if they have the support that they need, if they have the support when things are down, and if they do something that they love, and that may not be academics, mum and dad, you know, it might be something else, then, you know, they can make a significant contribution to whatever they want to put their hand to. And as we know, when these kids, if they end up getting into higher education, they do really well, you know, because they're doing something that they love. They will put the effort into it. And sometimes they're better than their non-dyslexic peers because they just get it, you know, because they're leaning into their strengths. But, you know, it is tough. Schooling is tough when they're young, and they just need to be looked after and definitely kept motivated.
If I could
Keep on going.
just add just one slight comment related to that, and you know, it's also to have a safe environment for the parents and the teachers.
Yes.
I encountered a lot of parents who are very anxious
Yes.
the moment they discover this, because they think there's a right way, and that right way may not be within reach, or they're struggling to find the right way. And I really like to encourage this exploration with your child, and treat this as an opportunity of, you know, it's a joyful opportunity to discover, yes, there are challenges and there's no denying it. And at the same time, this is a great chance for you to discover who your child really is. And let's not forget the forest for the trees. Let's look for that building of relationships. And parents, I mean, just coming back to that question, parents really join parent support groups, you know, talk to each other, know that you're not alone in this journey, as much as it may feel that way. And I can really appreciate that anxiety. And I would say the same for the teachers that I've met. When they're new, they feel this huge obligation and sense of responsibility. And I'd like to say, yes, it is a huge responsibility, and it is something we have to take seriously. But it's something that I think you should also grow into and learn and get the right support for yourselves as well. So really, it's about ensuring that everyone has got the right support structure and framework, and just surround ourselves with kindness and joy, and find ourselves in that right space. I feel that's really important for us to be able to help the children that we work with as well.
So do check out the Dyslexic Strengths Network.
Yes.
I know I said that should be the last question, but there's one question here that I would really like to respond to.
Yes.
It is from Abe from Ethiopia, who happens to be the chapter contributor for our Ethiopia chapter. So hello, Abe.
Hi, Abe.
And Abe asks, we are doing great jobs in various parts of the world. Don't you think making a larger consortium organization to enhance our impact, please consider as a call for partnership? Actually, Abe, there is already such an organization, and that is the International Dyslexia Association's global network. And Gad, in fact, has a very large part. I mean, he actually is one of the pioneers of this initiative. So perhaps, Gad, you would like to tell everyone more about the global network at the IDA.
Yes, absolutely. Ab, you're most welcome to rejoin. I think the Dyslexia FANA in Ethiopia used to be part of our network. I think it must have been a few years ago. But we have a big global network. I think we have in excess of 20 members, and we have different tiers of membership. So you can come in as an associate member, and then you can become a sort of a contributor. or you become a partner. Dyslexia Association of Singapore is actually a partner, one of only 2 internationally, because DAS is a very big organization. I think the African Dyslexia Association is maybe an associate. I think you are an associate, Rosaline, because they are a new organization coming in. And Kenya, I think, is a contributor. We have Maharashtra Dyslexia Association. We have the Pathway Foundation in Hong Kong. I think they are a partner, if I remember from my memory. So, and we have the BDA, the British Dyslexia Association, the Dyslexia Foundation in Liverpool. So we have parts, and we have the Dyslexia Association of Australia, the OSPEL, I think you're called in Australia, and the Dyslexia Association of Australia. So we have 2 organizations from Australia as well. So we have different peoples around the world. There is a sort of a joining process. You can apply, we meet them, and then we have meetings throughout the year. And then we do collaborative projects with each other, and we try to help each other, and we try to get together during the conference, which is next week, by the way. So if you're interested to become a member of our global network, please contact the IDA, International Dyslexia Association. It will be a pleasure. You can reach out to myself or Siang. Siang is a very active member. He used to be the chair as well. So you can reach out for us, and we'll make sure it will help you.
And yes, I think all 6 continents are represented in the global network. All we have to do now is to set up a dyslexia organization in Antarctica, and we'll have 7 continents.
Get the penguins on board.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So thank you, Abe, for that question. All good things must come to an end.
Yes.
And I thank all the wonderful panel here for sharing your time with us. I thank all our participants, including those on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us. And this was fun. I think we must do this again.
We will, Siang, we will.
Yes. I know there's some questions that we have not answered. Rest assured, we will be getting back to you separately on those questions.
We will put the answer up, or best answer from all of us up on the website. So I'll alert on Facebook or by email when we have done that. Hopefully very, very soon.
Yes.
Lovely having you all here again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.